Let's talk about Solitude. Now this is Wolf Skull Cave. You might know it as the area where a certain queen, raises the dead and tries to come back to life. If she had made it, if you don't kill her off, she would literally be the last living Septim, an heir to the throne. But the Wolf Queen, as they like to call her, she's long dead. She doesn't get the chance to come back to life. You kill her off as part of the plot, and it all goes down. It all starts in that cave there, after a little conversation in the Blue Palace over here. Now, this palace says was famous home of Septim, the Wolf Queen, one that liked to get in for dabbling in necromancy and raising dead and caused all kinds of problems in Skyrim during her reign. She also put her son, Uriel Septim II, on the throne. It says whereas prior to that, it says they had, Katrina was on the throne. But Potama is believed to have labelled her a bastard child, and that allowed her son, Uriel Septim II, to raise an army and take the throne for himself. Now, Uriel Septim II is not to be confused with the Uriel Septim we see in the Oblivion days. This is a much older Uriel Septim. And the Plagueis, who was Plagueis II, who was Potama's father, is not to be confused with Plagueis the Mad, because Plagueis the Mad was Plagueis III, whereas Potama Septim's father was Plagueis II. Now, Plagueis the Mad Septim, he's got a little room here. I'm sure you all know it. It's the one where you meet Sheogorath again, and Sheogorath talks about how he was there when the Oblivion Gates opened and he took part in it. That's because the player became Sheogorath, and this Sheogorath is still quite young looking. He hasn't aged like he should do, but Daedra are kind of like long lived, so you would expect him to age really quickly. Anyway, these days though, the Jarls of Skyrim, it's basically ruled from this room here. Although, if there was ever to be a Nord country, free of the Empire, I would guess this would just be another Jarl, and Windhelm would probably be the capital. Now, Morrowind and the Nords have a history of fighting each other, as I said earlier, and as a consequence, you couldn't cover Morrowind's history without covering Skyrim's history as well. And once you add to it the Greybeards, because the Greybeards, until Skyrim came out, were a mysterious group that were really badly explained in Overlore. Now we know, right, they live on a mountain and they've been trained to speak the dragon language by dragons themselves. If I can find the hill, if it's there, right? So High Hrothgar. So we learn a lot more about the Greybeards. But they were just a name in a book in the past lore. So this has added substance to an awful lot of the history I used to read about when we was playing Morrowind. Now Solitude, right? Not Solitude, Solstheim up here was part of an expansion for Morrowind where you establish a settlement, Raven Rock, and then when the ore runs out, the East Empire Company abandon it. House, I can't remember the name now, but anyhow, the Dwemer take it over and they run it as part of Morrowind. So, but even that's got a history of its own, quite a rich history. And it's a history the player's taken part in, because the player himself has been responsible for building the whole settlement in the past, in previous games. So if you played Morrowind, you can feel that sense of history there. Although I do have a tough time identifying other locations in Solstheim with the ones I know today, because I remember it being quite a windy path. Now, some of the most amazing sights in Skyrim can be seen from the Solitude docks. When you're looking at this very bridge here, says from the actual ground level. Now everybody expects it will collapse one day. When it does, that will be on a little island of its own, and the fort will be on an island of its own, and the two will have to be connected via a bridge. Until that point though, you have this amazing sight that wouldn't be out of place in Lord of the Rings artwork. And when I say Lord of the Rings artwork, I'm talking about the kind of artwork that existed before the films, because fans of Lord of the Rings did some really good art, you know, for the books back in the day. Anyway, you've got the traditional Nord, it says tombs for the dead here. We're not going to go into them, but you know, down there, that's also where the Solitude's Pottermore Wolf Queen plot warms up. Once you actually talk to, you know, I think it's the Jarl about it up there, you head down to Wolfskull Cave, where you have to deal, there it is, where you have to deal with the Wolf Queen, you know, attempting to be revived by priests. If she comes back, if the Wolf Queen returns, she's not only bring an army of undead with her, but she'd also be the last surviving Septim and heir to the throne of the Empire. The current Emperor would be declared illegitimate at that point, and the Septims would have returned. But this would have been an evil Septim, and nobody wants that. Up here you have the tower where the Falmor hang out, right there. That's their base in Solitude. And if we go to the temple here, it says you'll find that the one missing shrine is the Talos one, because the Empire's in agreement with the Aldermere Dominion, and that means, unlike Windhelm, they're not allowed to have the shrine to Talos up. Windhelm, on the other hand, are openly in revolt against the whole Aldermere Dominion, so they don't care, but it would have been here. Now, Talos, and as you know, he was quite an important figure in Nord mythology. However, there's always talk about whether he was a Nord or a Breton or something else. It depends on what you read and who you believe. This city here is built, you know, on the banks of the, I can't remember the name of the seas now. This sea here, anyway, says is actually on a coastal route, not only from where the Nord's ancient home node was up here, but a coastal route to Morrowind. Now, I've stated in previous videos that in wars between the Nords and the Duma, you know, to send armies back and forth along here to fight, you know, the Dwemer and the Duma and everybody else, and then various things, you know, Lorcan's was killed apparently, not Lorcan. Anyhow, you know, you've got the heart of Lorcan was taken by the elves and stuff like that. And this would have been more or less on the coast route to Morrowind. So underneath here, right down here, we've got the docks, and the docks are marked by a gigantic gate, clearly fortified, says, and protected. So any ships coming through there would not have gotten much further. Plus the forts up there overlook the whole bay. Right, they could rain down death on anybody coming through here. But still, this represents a major trading port for the Nords. Very liberal city in its way, metropolitan, you know. So it's very inclusive of other races. Whereas the further west you get, or east you get, the more nationalistic they become. I think the most imperial one though is probably down here, Riften, because it's closer to Bruma. But yeah, anyway, it says the city here, I mean, Uriel II would have been from here, Pottermore Septim was from here, well, the emperor from the days of Uriel Septim II, the one he overthrew, was declared a bastard child because of the decadence of the imperial, you know, well, the decadence of the imperial city at the time. In other words, probably people having an affair, I think Lord Fon was the one that was named as the father of the child, or the younger Septim, not Septim. So that opened the door to allow them to overthrow that particular emperor whilst he was still quite young.
Mm-hmm.
That, by the way, is building placed by one of my mods. It's the Solitude Fighters Guild. It's the first hall you go to set it off, and then branches open up in Markarth and eventually Riften.
Need something?
But yeah, Solitude, if you play in the game and you understand the history of Solitude, and you know that they don't want to see a return of the Wolf Queen, Potama, and that her return would mark death, destruction, all kinds of nasty things, because she's the one that plotted to overthrow the rightful heir of the Emperor and succeeded. And if she was brought back, she'd do it again. He says you'd end up with undead armies and all kinds of wars going on. It's because of her the War of the Red Diamond happened. That's the civil war that happened between Uriel Septim II and I think it's Katrina, I think her name is, the rightful heir to the throne at the time. And that went on for years. Uriel Septim got Skyrim, High Rock and others to fight for him, whereas she didn't. She lost. This, by the way, the Solitude Majestic Guild, that's another one of my mods. That's Dark Lord Grimoire if you're interested. It adds that. It also adds the Necromancer Guild down here. And whilst you can get Necromancer spells from there and other spells from there, and there's a whole spell system included in it that allows you to practice the spells and learn them, this one here, the quests in this one are a titty bit buggy, just so you know. The Bard's College and stuff, this is actually one of the ways you get to know some of the lore, behind Skyrim, is by following this plot line. I think it's a good way of doing it, to be honest. It's a good idea to introduce it. I think it's vastly underused though, vastly underused. Anyway, this whole city is now the capital of Skyrim, as you know. And it would have been in the Blue Palace over there, in the actual throne room, while Ulfric, killed the High King and escaped through the gate, just round here. You see the person who let him out being executed right at the beginning of the game when you enter Solitude for the first time. So it's a fairly recent event at the start of the game. Ulfric would have galloped through here, straight out the gate, the guard on the gate would have let him out, and that would have started the Civil War. There's quite a bit of history here, but it doesn't have that same ancient feeling as Windhelm does. It's still quite interesting though, still quite interesting. And don't forget, whilst this was home of Potama and Plagueis and Uriel for a bit, and Potama was the Queen of Solitude, it was never the seat of the Empire. It was always a seat of power for Skyrim. So, well, not always, because Windhelm wasn't, for the early part. But this is an important part of Skyrim's history, and in the modern version, in the modern game, says this is the area you need to control to be considered to be High King of Skyrim. So it's a very important location in that respect. Right, see you in the next one.